afternoon and welcome to our chats at the Gibson Museum and Cultural Center. I'm Boris Brumfield and the chair of the Friends of the Gibson Museum, and we're thrilled to have you with us for our July chat. And without a doubt, we have a wonderful office manager who is Corey Jensen, and she is staff here. Our museum is opened Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Thursday through Saturday from 10 to 4 p.m. However, we are opened until 7 on the first Friday of the month when the farmers market is going on across the street, as well as the first Friday events in the community. We'll be doing that through August, possibly September. But we invite you to come and experience this local museum that was created almost 10 years ago. This used to be the library that was set up by Chauncey Gibson, and when the county built the library across the street, which is the New County Library and Senior Center, this building was vacant. And the community suggested that we have a museum here. And through the Lake County Historical Society and the Friends of Gibson, we set up this museum 10 years ago. And then about 5 years ago, the county said, wow, you guys did a great job. You know, we'll take it over for you. And we said, thank you, because the volunteers were getting exhausted. So it's wonderful having the county support and underwriting. And it's wonderful having with us also the vice chair of the Gibson Museum and Cultural Center, and that's Ms. Millie Simon, who is with us. Yes, Millie has a great time. We meet once a month-ish, and we have several programs that we've scheduled. Next month, we'll talk about the 10th anniversary of the museum with our chat, and that's going to be with Calvin Higgins, who was very involved in that project, as well as Tom and his wife Patty Hicks. Patty was our first president of the Friends of the Gibson Museum. So they'll talk about what it took to transform a former library that was built in 1930. Now, for some that may seem a long time ago, but for those of us of mature years, it was just a little while ago. But we are excited to have that. But this afternoon, we are more than thrilled to have wonderful women here who will talk about Native art and what it means for our community historically and how it will take us into the future. Ladies, you're on.
Well, I just now learned that I was, you see, notice you put my picture on top, so I have to go first. But that's all right, you know, this is a chat, and that's what I, would like it to be, and maybe later questions. So, but we were going to discuss an exhibit that my friend Lisa Kaplan, founder and director of the Mendocino Arts Center.
Middletown.
I always
get my names mixed up.
Middletown,
Yeah.
I know it, because I'm kind of affiliated with that one too. And she had held the first Native exhibit ever held in Lake County. And I would say it was a very formal one and very large, considering 33 artists from different parts of the counties, Mendo County, Sonoma County too. Did you have somebody from there? And
Of course, Lake.
And all the Lake County tribal people. Some of them were involved. And it was my first exhibit. And I know she had put in the word that to give a personal account of what that exhibit meant to me. And I have been a gourd artist for over 30 years. This is not indigenous to Pomo people, gourds. They are indigenous to all the way the Southwest and the Midwest, and from Mexico on down, and of course Asia and Africa. So California Indians, at least in this northern part, we did not use gourds. because we made baskets. So we didn't need these as utensils. They were used as food and utensils throughout the world, wherever they grew. And so I chose this medium because I'm not a painter, I'm not a sculptor, and I'm not a weaver. And so even though I kind of do those kind of things, but I'm not an avid weaver as so many of them that are now rising. So I chose the wood burning because these designs were, I see them as a gift from our very early Pomo weavers who left these designs with us. And so I felt that it was my responsibility to portray them in its best way that I could. And so I found wood burning to be the most effective that gives it a look. Lots of people paint gourds. They don't do this because it takes a lot of energy. I'm talking about electrical energy, to burn this in. So people don't. And when they do wood burn, it's usually animals and figures and that sort of thing. So I chose this because it just does something for the design that I choose to portray. This particular gourd I just finished this year. It was the year of the rabbit, so this year I put a rabbit this particular rabbit design I love. And it's one I borrowed from a pre-Columbian art used by they call it it's a Mexican motif found in Mexico. And so I just found this rabbit design, and so I just borrowing it. It's not mine, so I say I'm borrowing it. I like to tell people where it came from. And I attached a piece of abalone just to this letters. Anyway, that's what I do. And this first show that Lisa invited me to show was the first ever. I never thought I would do that. And so that exhibit, Earth, Sky, and everything in between, which means traditional and contemporary. And I'm contemporary. And so I was really, it really opened a lot for me because, Native art was never, we never had for years pre-contact and during, after pre-contact, this wasn't considered art. Basketry, flint making, clamshell making, even the Plains Indians who developed the ledger art and all this sort of thing. All those sort of things were not considered art in comparison to the European style of art, which was fabulous, beautiful paintings and sculpture. So we were never put in that category. But we continued on with our art.
Yes.
And so art tells history. And so in this country, the history of art is shown in Native America. Yes. Because it was dug up from the graves, shown in the museums, collector art. Okay, it was the collectors. And it wasn't until our Pomo basketry only became as famous as it has become because of the collectors from that pre-contact area. Probably around the mid-1800s when a lot of the anthropologists, archaeologists, and professors were coming this way, and they knew a good thing when they saw it. Mm-hmm. So Pomo basketry became renowned, and they wanted more of it. So these weavers began designing their baskets, these beautiful designs. And they took them from their dreams, they took them from catalogs, they took them from various things that they saw, and they just created their own. They took them from the animals, the trees, the water, everything. And this is what they left us. And that's why it's, so to continue this art, like Millie is a basket weaver, and she may not be a master basket weaver, but she is a basket weaver because she is still learning, and it's a long process to become a basket weaver. And so anyway, so that's how that happened. And as years went on and on, we began to do paintings and photography and all this other type of art. And it's now we've hit the museums and the art centers. Yes, it was.
What is the actual process that you go through to create this?
That I don't really, it's so easy and it's not, to me, it's not worth talking about because it takes a long time and it wears me out. But there is a process. There is a process, you know. The board is a magnificent vegetable that petrifies into this wood. That's what I found miraculous about it. That's why I love them. Yeah, but it is a process, and it's too lengthy to talk about it. But,
Can I ask you a question?
yes. And
So I wanted to point everybody's attention to the baskets on the back shelf over there on the top. And those are Pomo baskets. I don't know from what time period they are.
do you know?
You get them from NAPA, that's all I know.
They were donated to the museum when it opened.
So there's a lovely collection in all of our Lake County museums.
Yes.
But all of those baskets were taken, stolen, bought, some were given back, they were given to the museums, they weren't given back to the people who they belong to or their families, and they're behind glass cases or in storage. And so one of the things that we did with the Earth, Sky, and Everything in Between exhibit is I talked to Clark from the museums and he brought more baskets out. Corinne Pierce, who we collaborated with, who is a master basket weaver from Big Valley and also Mendocino County, her family is. She's from the Wedgwood Valley of Pomo Indians. And she helped bring these baskets out, and she also led this project that we had called Weaving Baskets, Weaving Bridges, which Millie helped us put together. The first person that we went to was Millie and asked her, can we do this? What do you think about this? And actually it started with an idea of, so I can pass these around. These are just examples of what we might do of painting the water tower like a giant Pomo basket. And that was when I first came to you, right? Because the water tower, the small one, is in really bad disrepair and it needs a facelift. And so we thought about, well, what could we do up there? We talked to the Kalayumi Water Company and they gave us permission to create a mural. And so the question was, how do you do that? Well, the truth of the matter is that I saw Eddie Crandall on Zoom during COVID with a beautiful Pomo blanket behind him. And then I was like, that's it. Because you see these positive, the red is positive, the black is negative. You see the power of the relationship between these positive, negative shapes on the one hand, which you can see from a distance. You would be able to see from a distance. And on the other hand, it speaks to the people who were first here and the culture that is first here. It honors the first people. And so by doing that, we were really declaring a sense of place, which after the fire in particular, I mean, a lot of people, you all know, all of you who lived here, that there were neighbors who left, you know? So how do we rally together again, beautify our place, declare a sense of place, and also bring everybody together? Well, nature does that, history does that, and the people who are still here, who were first here, let's honor them. So we start with that and putting a stake in the ground for that. And for that I spoke to Millie. We can pass these around again. These are just samples, and these are samples that were made just to illustrate what it might look like. The process that we're going to do will involve Pomo educators doing workshops that are invited to everybody to attend, and we hope to bring a lot of tribal folk in to kind of download the designs that they've lived with for all their lives, create designs, and then there will be like a jury process, and you can give this to the other side, Mary. There will be a jurying process that with the tribe having the final word on what's gonna go up there, but there will be a jurying process, and then once we select, basically there'll be 4 workshops, and people can create, they can co-create, they can collaborate, people can not come to the workshops, like Wanda doesn't necessarily need to come to the workshop, although what Wanda would get if she came to a workshop, she would get one of my team members from the MAC team, which includes 2 young Native artists who are adept with computers, helping to create imagery like that so that the designs can be assessed by the tribe, by the public. And then once we select 2 or 3 for each tower, then we'll bring them out for public input. And then the public can comment on those, and again, Kaliomi and the tribe will have the final word of those selections as well. So, but Wanda's work also inspired this, and Wanda actually, she developed a design for us that we didn't use for this second application that we did, but we used it for the first application that we did, and then we made some refinements and simplified. So, but it's all about these positive, negative shapes. So I want to ask you, Wanda, so first, the difference between Earth, Sky, and Everything in Between and the exhibits that are at the museums is that all of the artists were alive. So all of the work was done by people who were alive. So we, in effect, brought Pomo and other Native, they were mostly Pomo, but not all, other Native artists out. You know, it's like their ancestors are behind glass, but here we are, they are, doing their work. And I didn't curate the exhibit, Corinne did. I just held space, and I facilitated it happening. So, in other words, I had the team that made it happen, I paid for the postage through this grant, I helped hang it, she would ask me, how does this look, how does that look, or I would make suggestions, but she brought all the artists. We did do a call for work, but it was curated by a Pomo individual about Native individual artists, and it did feature between 31 and 33 artists, because there were some collaborations.
Yeah, and all different ages too.
All different ages, yeah. So, and we had someone from the Yurok tribe, and we had a few people from outside the area, but the majority were from the Tri-County region of Mendocino Lake and Sonoma counties. So, and Millie even made something. She even helped make something, Millie, right?
Yeah. Well, I think the gentleman with this T-shirt explains the work that Millie and Corinne did. Yes, and missing and murdered Indigenous people.
Oh, this T-shirt,
Yes.
yeah. Can you just stand up
just
for a
stand up
second?
and face the, this is,
This is an event we did at like kind of Travel Out.
uh-huh.
For the missing and injured.
Yeah,
That was this year.
yeah.
This is an issue that has finally come out,
Yes.
because within just the federal government, there are thousands beyond thousands of cases of missing and murdered Native people throughout the nation. And never resolved, never investigated, just a record. That's it.
I heard an amazing statistic. Native people represent.
Can you project your voice?
I heard an amazing statistic as a result of this event. Although Native culture represents the smallest demographic percentage in population in the United States, the missing people is the biggest. So the smallest percentage of people represented in our country are the most oppressed, the most damaged, the most traumatized, the most hurt.
Yeah.
And it continues till this day.
Yes.
This hasn't gone away at all. And people try to act like it has.
Yeah, it's.
We can't bring enough awareness to this.
That's right. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
That's why we're getting back to our Native art never having been part of, mainstream America. But it is in very silent ways. You'll see designs everywhere that have been taken from Native art. Other, Native artists, their work has been, you see designer clothes now, but he's wearing our, designs like this. You'll see it all over, so. So that's an impact that we don't get to enjoy, you know what I mean? You know, but there are many Native Americans now who put their artwork and their businesses online. That's one of the best, greater ways that they can do it because, you know, in remote areas like this, you know, it's not, you just don't derive enough population to sell and be successful. So, yeah, so that's one way of happening. And I usually participate in mainly Native events. And that's where I'm comfortable, that's where I feel good about, you know, selling my work. And just recently, you know, I attended two. One was in Tuolumne and one was at Ohlone Park in Berkeley. Now these two events, what's important about them is that they only allow California Native artists. And that is to preserve our art, whatever medium it is, and to grow it.
Yes.
And so that's why those events are important, and it's a way of preserving. It also tells our history, art is history. And
Can I ask you some more questions?
sure, anything, you can ask me anything.
So, so one of the things that Wanda and I, Millie participated in this, Jim Brown participated, and a couple of others, Eagle Brown, and there was one other cultural practitioner, of course, Corinne, is that when we had Earth Sky and everything in between we did field trips. And we had to finish, the timing of the grant was such that the exhibit was open during summer vacation, and it's a process to work with schools and schedule field trips, but in 2.5 to 3 weeks, we had 580 students come through. And most of them had the opportunity to both be in the gallery and get a walkthrough with a cultural educator and myself asking questions, and make something in the studio that was reflective of patterns and nature. And some of them just went through and did like a historical, more of a academic sort of, or a textual, you know, verb speaking, a speaking tour, because like we had the whole 7th grade in one day from Middletown, and then we had the civics and some history classes come in from the high school. So we had to do those more quickly, but most of the kids who came through got a chance to make art too. So why am I mentioning this? Because I want to ask you a couple of questions. First of all, I mean, I learned so much through this process. I learned what blood quantum means, for example. Okay, so, and I think that all of these things are important because in contemporary art, we talk about real things. And blood quantum is a real issue. And it actually goes a little bit hand in hand with the missing and murdered indigenous people because there's an erasure happening there, right? So, can you tell us a little bit about blood quantum? So that, does anybody in the room know what blood quantum means?
Okay, well,
Could you tell us a little bit about
I'll give you a
that?
little bit more information. Blood quantum was, that was set by federal policy. And it really alludes to benefits, federal funding. And so when we were full bloods, you know, Millie, you are considered a full blood, I'm a half blood. And so the federal government decreed that in order to be a Native Indian, in order to be an Indian, you have to be a quarter blood. That was kind of like they set that parameter of what blood quantum is. And so in order for us to receive these wonderful benefits from the federal government, such as reservation land, you know, to receive these benefits in terms of grants and federal dollars, you have to have that amount of blood quantum, and you have to be you have to either be automatically part of that tribe, or you had to be adopted, or you had to, either way, you had to be connected to a tribe of other Native Americans in your area. And when the federal government designated us as a tribe, you know, then you had to have that blood quantum in order to be a tribal member. So it is, many tribes in the United States have gone lineal descendant, which means that as long as that Native person can go through their lineage and connect with that original person who was in that tribe, then you can be a member, even if you have 1/16th or 100th or whatever, just as long as you can prove you were descended from that individual. So that's why you have tribes like the Osage, Choctaws, and Cherokees who have the highest population. The Navajos have the highest population too, but they have strong clanship type tribal laws. Some tribes have that clanship tribal law, traditional law, whereas no other can come in, or you can have to, you know, your blood quantum will make a difference. So out of that blood quantum became a problem when some tribes, as they grew in economically, like gaming, which made many tribes very wealthy here in California, and tribes who aren't so wealthy still decided that there were certain people they didn't want in the tribe, so they disenrolled them. And that became a very personal political thing. But the federal government will not recognize disenrollment in court, because it was determined by the Supreme Court back in, I think it was 68 or something like that. A woman who married into a clan in one of the pueblos. They have, a lot of those pueblos have traditional law in the Southwest. And their traditional law said that her children, married into this tribe, her children could not be members of the tribe. So we went to Supreme Court. The Supreme Court just came down with a tribe determines its own membership. So when all this disenrollment happened in California, which was about 5,000 people, natives who were removed from their tribe, politically it meant that you are no longer recognized as a federal government type Indian, but it doesn't mean you're not an Indian.
Right.
You know, and so you just lose the benefits, you lose, you know, the things that all the other tribal members get. And so blood quantum plays this big political part, which many tribes are at a kind of like in a standstill. They don't know whether to go lineal descendant or say full blood. Either way, no matter what, the bloodline will thin out through intermarriage and all that sort of thing, which is happening now, you know, which is, you know, can't be stopped. You know, all of us have family members that intermarry with different races.
Right.
And so unless we go back to arranged marriages and that little girl will be married to my little grandson or whatever, that's the only way. Now, wouldn't that be beautiful? And it can still be done. And some tribes, believe it or not, still do that. They can do that. So blood quantum is, that's what it is.
But it affects not only the native or First Peoples, it affects other ethnic groups as well as religious groups in terms of other...
Yes, you know, especially Black Americans, because during the slavery times in the South, during the slavery times, the Cherokee and all those tribes in the Southwest, in Florida, Oklahoma, Alabama, all the way up to North and South Carolina, all that whole region called the South. During that slavery time, if a slave ran away, those local Indians would take them in, and those Indians actually. Those slaves became their slaves, but not in this way that they were being treated by the white slaver. They were allowed to learn the culture, they were allowed to learn the language, they were allowed to intermarry, and that is why we have a very big population of Black Afro-Americans who are Indian as well. And so they have two sides to their story, you know, and you know, and it's a beautiful combination historically and culturally. And so that exists now. The biggest casino in the United States is Fox in Connecticut. What is it called?
Back east, I know.
Yeah.
Foxwood.
Foxwood, yeah. And those Indians are part Black. And a very small population, so they're probably some of the richest Indians in the country. But it started, and even in California, we have one Black family who are part of the casino ownership, very small. And so it's because as long as you can prove that bloodline, you have carried it all your life, and that's how it works. That's how it works at Quantum.
So this is one of many issues that came up or that was brought to light in the exhibit. There are two works by an artist named Ryan Young that were in the exhibit about this, and they enabled us to be able to talk about this and raise awareness to this, just like the missing and murdered Indigenous women piece enabled us to raise awareness to missing and murdered Indigenous people. Another thing that I learned about was when were Native people allowed to practice their spirituality, right?
Well, you know, during the, there was the genocide here in California, right here in Lake County. And our people were slaves to the white ranchers here. And everything, you know, we lost everything. But under that slavery, you know, you're not allowed, you know, I mean, you can't hunt anymore, you can't gather anymore, you can't do the things that were natural to us. So these things, you know, everything was broken up because our Medicine people were killed, gone, and then after that genocide, you know, it was just a matter of survival. And very few Pomo people, you know, kept things going in their own way, but they had no advocacy, they had no support, they had nothing. They only continued on as they knew how to continue on. And throughout these years, throughout our history here in Lake County, you know, we lost a lot, and the language was one. It was intercepted. The genocide was, after the genocide came the Indian boarding school. And my mother was a product of that Indian boarding school. Just imagine you and your sister alone. Maybe you were, I think my mom was like 5 and she was about 7, or something like that. 2 little girls taken from here, literally kidnapped, put on a train in Oakland. You're in this strange thing, you know, and you go down to Riverside, you're kept there, you're imprisoned there for a few holdover, and then you're shipped over to Stewart, Nevada, out in the desert. So these were kidnappings, you know, very traumatic, you know. And so that is what happened, that interception happened for a long time. And these schools were meant to take the Indian out of the Indian. And very noted people in your daily lives, you know these things, they hated Indians, historical figures, I mean, who wanted the Indians exterminated here in California, and that's what the genocide was about. And so how did we survive? We survived. The Bloody Island is the nearest one of our history that was the only piece of our history that was documented by a Native American. He documented after, a few years after the genocide, at the turn of the century, William Benson did this. And he was half white, but he chose to be a Pomo. But he learned to type, and he typed his stories, and you can see that at the Courthouse Museum or the library. And, so all that, not being able to practice, not being able to see art and speak to, and no more medicine people. We had very strong medicine people, leaders, and starvation and disease interrupted all of that. And so we are still, just like learning to weave. We are still learning our culture. We have a lot of catch up to do. And being a part of something, the first, is still happening for our people.
Yes.
I was the first Pomo to be elected to a school board at the Upper Lake.
Yes.
We finally have 2 natives on the board of supervisors, the first.
Right.
This is
It's a big deal.
2023. And, so we are still, but this is our job, this is our responsibility to continue on. And art is the greatest medium for us to do it. And for young people, art is very important because it's a challenge for them, because it opens their eyes and it gives them something to believe in themselves and not have to be somebody else.
Yes.
So that's why art is important, and in all facets of groups of people. And it's now played a very big part in our life, in our Pomo lives, because we do have a Pomo movement of our Pomo, the art of Pomo culture is a movement, really. And we have the Pomo Weaver Society, which was just started up by these master basket weavers, Silver Toledo and Corinne Pierce and Emil Marufo. And this society only accepts Pomo people to learn Pomo weaving. That's all. You can't be from any other tribe or non-Indian or whatever. You have to be a Pomo if you want to learn the way of Pomo weaving. And that's all they teach and do. And so that is the kind of a form of regression. Sometimes you have to go backwards in order to go forward. And so that Pomo Weavers, that's how I look at it. And so I support it completely, and hope that it's just wonderful, because just recently Middletown Rancheria hosted the California Indian Basket Weavers Association, and this group has been going on for how many years, Millie? 40, 50 years at least. Yeah. So there have been things in the art world that have been continuing on that nobody even knew, because first of all, non-Indians didn't believe that California Indians existed until gaming, But for years, this newsletter has been published for over 50 years now. And it was founded by a hippie guy, and he just recently, just a few years ago, had to let it go and turn it over to a new group of Indians, to writers and artists and everybody, because he now has Parkinson's disease, and he can't, his mobility is not. But for years, he published native stories, native artists, and this is, so now our artwork is getting published. This is Emil Marufo's, her artwork.
Is that a monthly or?
It's a quarterly, yeah. And this is my niece's story about my brother taking her out to eat nuts out of the ground that we grew up on. And it's just a beautiful little story she did. And Emil designed this special picture for her story. So this has been going on for years and years and years. And without it, we would not have had the connection that we do throughout California, all these artists. And so that's what we do. And then getting our work published is something, so this is Corinne's publication, and on her basketry, and so this is really important, this kind of documentation, because at one time we had one of our very famous basket weavers, Elsie Allen. She published a book about how to do Pomo basket weaving, and she was criticized for it. But her mother told her that when she passed, that all those baskets that they had, she's not to destroy them, because our way was when the basket weaver died, or whoever owned that basket went with them. And so if she hadn't have done that, then we wouldn't be learning what we're learning today. And the same thing with, I believe, Maria, is it Maria Montez, the famous potter? Anyway, Southwest, she did the same thing, and she was criticized by her own people. When you do that, and we're gonna get lost, we're gonna lose something, but it didn't happen. It didn't happen with Elsie Allen either. And but again, we have to. Anybody could copy this. There's nothing I can do about it, So really, but if you want to go through the effort of go right ahead, make your own design stuff. And then art appears in our protests. This is Alcatraz. This was a news article that came out about the 50-year anniversary. And so I think some of that painting, those words on Alcatraz Island are still there. But there was a lot of art that came out of Alcatraz when it was occupied. But I want to read you something that came out of this this 50-year celebration. My sister was one of the original organizers on Alcatraz, and she was an artist too. And my mom went to visit her on Alcatraz Island, and my sister, which has now become an artifact, had found this huge ledger, the old accounting books, hard ledger books. She kept that, and she used it as a sign-in book. So hundreds and hundreds of Indians and celebrities, all kinds of people signed that book with just pages of autographs. Well, my mom autographed that book, and this is what she wrote. We're about to leave for Alcatraz, maybe for the last time, to this beautiful little island, which means a little something which no one will ever understand my feelings. Marie Boggs Quitiquit. That was 50 years ago, and of course my mother is gone, but I never thought that this little old Pomo woman, from her history of being incarcerated in Indian boarding school and having given birth to like 14 kids, and we were farm laborers. She loved to work, and that she would end up in the Los Angeles Times.
Wow.
Which I was so proud that of all the things that they took about Alcatraz, they took her without any word from us or asking or anything. And so this is a real tribute to my mom.
Yes.
And because it's now become history. That book is now in the Gene Autry Museum, and I think you can pull it up on the internet. And it's safe, and it's in a good place. And but a lot of people, my sister would allow people to scroll through it. There's my grandpa, that's my mother. It was just really, really something.
I wanted to ask you, is there a word for art or artist in native languages?
No, because as far as I know, I don't know. Well, first of all, I don't know my language, okay? But from all what I have heard from people and people who do know some of our language, there are no words for certain things in our everyday life as we know it today. And art is not one. This was a cradle to hold the baby while the mother was gathering tulies sedge down at the lake. The baby sat in this cradle up against a tree while the mother was gathering food and basket materials. So it's not art, it's a utility, it's a,
It's a tool.
it's comparable to the baby carriers today. But it has become a form of art because because that's the only way we can describe it. And this is not art, this was utility. People use to store their food and carry water. Still today, they use gourds to do it. But here's the thing. I think for me personally, how I grew up, when you do something, you do it right, or don't do it at all. That was my parents' motto. And so you have to be good. If you're going to be a farm laborer, being a damn good one, and that's what we were, farm laborers. And so that taught us ethics and to turn out a product the right way. And so natives, I think, have a natural thing, and maybe, people who are born artists, as we say, you always want to make things more beautiful, more better, and why not make it look beautiful if you can. That's when we got the beads. They started making them when we learned to get the paint, those paintings on the teepees. They made the paint. So art, if you call that art, then so be it. But it was not, I don't know the word for art. It's of the human spirit, I guess.
Oh, how beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and inspired by nature.
Yes. Well, what else?
And
is there?
using nature.
That was it. That was the whole thing. The whole shebang of spirituality and life and food. Everything is from the environment, and every civilization went to that.
And so there's a marrying of form and function. Form being the way things look or are shaped, and function being what we use them for. So that brings us back to Wanda's gourd. So this is a beautiful piece. And there is meaning in it as well. Can you tell the people here what?
Yeah, there's two different ways that people in the northern, I got this design from our designs are kind of universal here in the northern region. I'm talking about all the way from Humboldt to Lake County. But this is called the swallowtail because the bird has, at the end of its tail, there's this sharp, a lot of birds have it, but the swallowtail, that's how it was described by a basket weaver. So that's where that came from. There is another description for it, but that people use. So the different designs, have different meanings. Yeah, and this is a standard. It could mean ants. It could mean anything. That is in. Depends on how you put it. How you place it. So, yeah.
You had a question?
Yeah,
Or
you
statement?
yeah.
I did. Well, if there was no word for art in the community, was there people who were better at weaving? Were they teachers, or did they make baskets for everyone and people shared the labor?
Well, I have to picture myself in a village, eh? But, as in many, if you're in a group, there's always somebody who does something better than anybody else. Okay, the man was a master arrow maker, bow maker, flint maker, because flint was very important. The obsidian stone was very important. And there were knives and everything, the arrowheads, so if you were the best, then you were looked to teach probably, and to make those things special. They were made into special gifts. Now, if you were a basket weaver, children learned it at a very young age. And the way, this I do know about Pomo people, we spoil our children up until a certain age. And so children were allowed to just run and play. They had no duties or anything. They could just be children until they got to a certain age. Then you better start learning. And that was because I believe our people were very highly organized that way. And so that's where we have puberty ceremonies and things like that, you know. So yeah, I think everybody had to be a teacher in some way.
I'm gonna quote our friend Millie, who, when she presented at the Weaving Baskets, Weaving Bridges workshop, she said, "My parents were geniuses. All my ancestors were geniuses because they had to learn how to survive off the land. So you have to be ingenious in order to do that and survive." Right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. You know, the willow baskets, the open weave baskets that were fish traps and berry carriers and sifters and all this sort of thing. You know, the people went out and they just took the willow and made that basket right there in order to collect the food.
Or catch fish.
Yes, whatever it was, they needed that a basket
And
for
still
it.
today,
They
if
made
they
it.
don't have any other tool and they see the fish, they're gonna make it right there. And they don't need to run it by a fishing pole or anything.
Or catch it with
They
their
make
hands.
right
No,
there.
or spears.
Oh, yeah.
And,
Spears.
Yeah.
And that's, yeah, and we made our own string. I can't believe the string that was made. Just like the big fishing nets you see today, that our people out of the dog bane plant made string.
And boats out of,
And boats out of the tulies.
Boats out of the
so
tulies?
That floated, yeah.
And meals at the dog bane is right here on Trout Creek.
Oh, yeah?
Mhm.
Oh, we should
Because
look at
it's
some
on
of
the
the string.
and
But I just want to mention one thing else about art, non-Indians doing art about Indians. And this was something that happened 2 years ago. This French artist came with a group of investors here to Lake County about the gold. And so he painted this picture, and it's supposed to be, well, it was a ceremony at the Elam colony, the Pomo people down there. And so this was, this painting is 140 years old. And it was housed at the Met in New York all these years, kind of like a lost painting. Japani, they discovered that because it was Pomo, that it would be shown here at the DeYoung Museum in San Francisco. So there was this big grand reception, which was just fabulous, showing this man's artwork about the Pomos in this picture. So it was really, you know, but it's also a controversial picture, because in it he put a couple of the white men that were in there, and that wouldn't happen at a ceremony. And so there's controversy about this, but that's good, you know, it keeps us going. But you know, but it's still an original, it exists, and that this French painter came through, and he painted other tribes around the nation too. So his art was all exhibited at the DeYoung.
But this exhibit did more than that, because if in this exhibit, there are also Pomo baskets.
Yes, oh yeah.
Okay, and the Pomo basketry was curated by Sherry,
Fitch Smith.
yeah, so by a Pomo person,
Yeah.
by a Pomo expert. And she knows all of the
Oh,
live,
yes, yes.
as well as they borrowed baskets probably from Lake County and other museums, probably Grace
Yeah.
Hudson as well.
Yeah.
But also Corrine had worked there, I believe Neo
Yeah.
had, did Neo have something in there as well?
Yeah.
Robert Geary had one.
Robert
Yeah.
Geary had work in there, Shelley Smith, yeah, and so there, Silver had work in there, Cliff had work, Cliff McKay had work in there, so, and it was like, it was one of those times where they gave indigenous people a voice. You know, it's like, you curate your work, and it was at this major gallery. So, yes, there was controversy,
Mhm.
and
Oh, yeah,
that's, and that
it
needs to be
opened another door.
recognized.
It opened another
Yeah.
door for us.
And another
Yes.
thing that they did was they also did a documentary about the Sulphur Bank mine disaster. So, which her niece Mio spoke about, as well as
Yes.
Robert Geary, who lives there. So that was displayed very large, you know, as big as this on the wall, and it was right before you got to the exhibit. So it's like, it's raising, it's like little rocks being thrown that are making ripples, you know, and it's getting larger and larger. At the same time that we did our exhibit, our safety, our sovereign, no, not our safety, our sovereignty, we're still here, or gathering time? Gathering time. Gathering time opened at the Grace
Yeah.
Hudson just a month or two after, so it was being planned at the same time.
And
So
that show was curated by Mio Marupo.
Yes.
You know, I showed you one of her art pictures in there.
yeah,
That show was the biggest that Grace Hudson had ever had. The attendance was magnificent, not just Indians, but people from all over came to that show. And it was one of the biggest highlights that ever happened in, as far as the Native exhibit.
I bet.
And, but ours was first, and then Corinne did another show at the Corner Gallery in Ukiah, and this was a quilt show. And I displayed my work too, but this was about quilts and the women, and I guess there were some men who sewed also, I'm not sure. But these quilts were about language, and it was about the missing, the best ones were about the missing and murdered Indian people, because they sewed their faces onto these quilts, and it was just very, very powerful.
And we exhibited at
Yes.
the MAC.
Yes.
So it was up for 6 weeks at the MAC.
Mhm.
So, and then Mio's exhibit,
Yes, yes.
our gathering time moved over to Sonoma.
Well,
In
no,
a
it was
different
it was a
iteration.
different,
Yeah, different
total
iteration.
different show, yeah. But that was at the Sonoma
And that was
Valley
called
Museum.
We're Still Here?
And, I think so, we're
Yeah,
still
We're
here.
Still Here, yeah.
That was also one of their biggest shows. And so when I talked about this, the culture of Pomo art movement, and this has all happened just one after the other, and it's now continuing.
Yep.
And we have to do it, you know, it's up to us too, you know, but wonderful, great people like Lisa
Thank you.
and Sherry Smith and
Mary Wilson.
and Mary, yeah. And, you know, just, you know, it's about the youth and these young people here, you know, if you have an art, you have an ability for art, that you need to just keep on it. Draw, paint, photography, whatever it is that's your desire. Let me tell you, it will come up, you will need it in your later life. I didn't start until I was in my mid-30s.
One more thing. First of all, Mayo will be curating an exhibit at the MAC in October. I can't remember the name, but it's around birds, feathers, and other thoughts. I believe that's the draft that I have of it in my brain. So that'll be in the small gallery. We also had the largest attendance of any exhibit, and of course the most indigenous people that we've ever had for the Earth, Sky, and Everything in between exhibit. That was the largest attendance we ever had. And also, something else that happened is that we were given a Thule boat, and I want to just talk about the Thule boats for a minute. We were given a Thule boat, which is permanently exhibited at the MAC now, to also remind us and assert the first people who were here that are still here. And that was a Thule boat that was made in the Thule Boat Festival, which is happening, I believe, next weekend, actually, up at Big Valley.
Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Yeah. And then we also have one of Corinne's baskets on display permanently, and we have had, we've rotated some of Mayo's prints, some of Keli Malachi, who is on our staff now, but he's a 23-year-old who exhibited also for his first time in the Earth, Sky, and Everything in between exhibit. He's now teaching also, which is wonderful. He teaches a character design class. And yesterday, he and Wayla Brown from Elam, who is also a staff member, went up to Robinson, where there was a young Gona, a young people's
Of
gathering.
Native Americans, yeah, I
Yeah.
saw him there.
Yeah, and they taught a class to, I don't know, 40 kids.
Yeah, there's been.
Utilizing some of the skills that they learned with us, which was awesome, and it's a synthesis all the time. And then also we have Ryan Young's work on exhibit on a regular basis, very powerful statement work. So there's more to come. It's just the beginning,
Yeah,
you know?
it is, yeah.
And there's more to come here. And also, Wanda was talking about, you know, you can't weave with the Pomo's Weaver Society, but when we have guest weavers who come, those are open to the public.
Yeah.
So, and I encourage you to please come to the MAC and participate in those.
What are the
Please.
hours that the MAC is open?
The MAC is open on, from Thursday to Monday from 10:30 to 5, and all of our workshops and events are advertised through, you know, on Facebook, through an email letter that you can go to our website, Middletown Art, A-R-T, center.org, and subscribe to our email. We put flyers up in town. We are beginning work at the Eco Arts Park. We have a new project called Reciprocity that we just got a grant from Upstate California Creative Corps to revitalize the park, which of course it belongs to the County of Lake. It's stewarded by the County of Lake, but we're going to be bringing 4 different projects with tribal folks from Lake County who are going to be doing that, as well as other artists and collaborations. We're going to be making animals who are no longer in the park from the oak sprouts. We're culling the oak sprouts because there's too many of them after they cut down the trees. Everybody knows that there's like tons of oaks. So we're beginning to take those out, and we're going to make animals out of those to put in the park. And then there's many other projects, you know, in native species and non-native species, so people can learn. And it's all community engaged art, so the community is invited to come and help us make this art. I'll be doing a piece with mud and seeds and what else? And then the water tower project will be coming up.
I'd like to say something about the Pomo statue.
Oh,
Now,
yes,
Millie and
please.
I have been on this project almost at the beginning, Millie a little bit longer than me, but the County of Lake created a tribal advisory committee to the museums of Lake County. That's the 3 museums, the schoolhouse, the Gibson, and the courthouse museum. So we, depending on, you know, the whatever comes up, any native issues
Related
or exhibits that are forthcoming in these museums, we have a say about it. And right now, we got a nice grant to refurbish the Pomo Gallery. And this our expert, Sherry Smith, came in to look at all those baskets and you know, she knows Pomo basketry in and out. So she's helping us with that. So it'll be all new cases and more, you know, it's going to be beautiful when it's done. But this is the other project that our Tribal Advisory Committee has been responsible for, and that's the creation and the building of a Pomo bronze statue. This is going to be about 6 feet high off the ground, be up on a stand and even higher. So Millie and I were responsible for the female, and the men were responsible for the male. And so we're really proud of that it's gotten this far. So we are in the fundraising stage, so you know, if you want to make a donation, you can do it online or at the museum or right in that little box, you know. But so this maquette will be formalized in a, I guess it's supposed to be in bronze also, be like a 12-inch. And that will be the one, you know, we're hoping he'll get that done soon, because then we could do really major fundraising, because we do need a lot of money.
And they
It's the
also
other project.
received the
Oh.
California,
Yes, we did.
the
Yeah.
Upstate California Creative Corps grant. So there were 2 projects from in Lake County, just by Lake County folks, which
Yeah.
are the Reciprocity and the Lake Pomo
Yeah.
Family Statue, and then there were a few others by people who are doing projects that extend beyond Lake County. They're in Lake County, like Corinne Pierce got a grant to do workshops in Lake County and in Mendocino County, and there were a couple of other things that weren't just for Lake County, but
So
it's
we were
cool.
really happy about that it's just remarkable, that, these three major native things of art received those grants. And that Creative Core money, it came into California and was dispersed to the northern region. So the Arts Council of Nevada oversaw this whole big grant process. And
She was on the panel.
yeah, and Lake County got a significant amount, and
I want to ask if anyone else has questions.
yeah, please,
Because it's really, the presentations have been wonderful, truly appreciated. And it's the cooperation that we have as people of Lake County, recognizing the First Peoples. And we here at the Gibson we honored families about 2 years ago, oh no, more than that, before COVID. Each month, every 2 to 3 months, we would honor a new family from the community. And you came over when we honored the Simon family.
I remember that very
one
much.
of the families. But we look forward to that continuing or starting up again. But we truly appreciate that you were here. Again, are there any questions that you might have? Anyone? Right. Well, please know this is going to be online on the county's YouTube channel, this whole talk. And if I could get a picture of your t-shirt, I would appreciate it after we finish.
Your beard out of it.
Yes, we'll scoot the beard over to the side. And thank you, ladies,
Thank
so
you, Lois.
very,
Thank
very
you, Lois.
much.
Thank you for inviting us.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's a privilege, and thank you, Millie,
And-
always.
Yeah, and getting
And thank
these
you,
updates
Wanda.
on the projects that are going on.
And thank you all for
Yes.
coming.
Yes,
you know?
thank you.
Yeah.
Let's